Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 80 of the Hardly Millennial podcast, where we are young, dumb, and full of
opinions.
Ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everybody. How are you? As always, my name is Adam.
I'm Matthew Lynn. Hope everyone's doing good tonight.
Hope everyone is doing good. So I thought I would open this podcast up with, as I was going through the news section on the internet here, of looking for things to talk about today, I came across, and so I thought this was clickbait. And it was good enough clickbait where I had to click on it, and then I was skimming through the article and found out, oh no, like this is true. This is really what they think is happening.
Oh wow.
And so it's
Some things are just that good.
So it's an article from Newsweek, and the headline reads, "Whale harassing Norwegian ships likely trained by Russia, experts say."
What?
Yes, I'm
Love
dead
it already.
serious.
Okay.
So of course, I was like, wait a second,
The Russians are teaching whales to fuck with boats.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So let me read through the first couple paragraphs just to give you guys an idea what's happening here. Norwegian marine experts have encountered a beluga whale they believe was been trained by the Russian Navy to harass foreign shipping as part of a wider program of utilizing marine mammals in military operations. The whale was spotted in the Barents Sea, close to the small village of Inga in the far north of the country last week, The Guardian reported. Fishermen became suspicious when they saw that the animal was wearing a black harness and appeared to repeatedly seek out their boats. So the Russians are training sea life now.
Well, what kind of harassment are we talking about? What, like, is it sexual harassment? Are they coming up and like humping the boats? Like how are they harassing
We're
them?
being raped, sir. Who's raping us? A beluga whale.
It's a beluga whale, sir.
Let's see. It goes, let me read through more then. University of Norway concurred. He explained, "We know that in Russia, they have had domestic whales in captivity, and also that some of these have apparently been released. Then they often seek out boats."
Okay.
The Russian military is reportedly renewing its Cold War era of training of marine mammals, considering such animals useful tools in defending naval bases, assisting military divers, and even attacking intruders. So
We will use the marine life, sir.
use the Chekhov. How are the beluga whales?
Maybe fucking Vladimir Putin is Aquaman.
I was
And
just
he
thinking, I
talks
was
to the
like,
fucking whales.
I was like, did Vladimir Putin watch like the Aquaman movie? He goes, see that?
This is genius.
We do that. We do that. We kill a Norwegian.
We're like building missiles in America. And they're like, no.
No.
The whales. We will use the whales.
Do we have manatees? We have 3 manatees, Your Highness. Send them all out.
Oh, damn. Well, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they mention it says right here, Russian military is reportedly renewing its Cold War era
That means
training
they've done it
mammals.
before.
I was going to say, that means they've done this before. So first of all, I'd like to applaud you, Russia.
Maybe it'll work this time.
That is that is beyond like the future. Like that's something we expect to see in like 2300.
Dude, that's like, to me, that's a ghetto navy. That's like, well, you don't have money to build ships, so let's just catch a bunch of whales and put machine guns on them.
Oh my gosh. Was that thing in,
What
like,
a
Austin Powers?
stereotypically Russian
Was it, like,
thing to do.
No,
You know what I mean? They're like, we'll have the most powerful navy in the world, but we can't afford it, so we'll make it out of whales.
Like what happens? Like naval ships, like American naval ships are gonna pull up. Like I guess it wouldn't pull up to Russia. I guess on one side they could, and all of a sudden, like there's just like Russian operatives there with a harness on these beluga whales, like giant beards. The fucking Kafka hats.
It's genius. I just thought of this though. It's illegal to kill whales. So it would be, they would be calling in like, sir, they'd be calling the generals in, sir, we can't, do we shoot it? We can't shoot. It'd be like, no, hold fire. It's genius.
didn't even think about. Yes, I would have to say that it's a fucking genius, isn't it?
The only Navy who could take them out would be the Japanese Navy because they don't give a fuck
They
about
don't
whales
give
or
two
dolphins.
shits about that.
Nope,
and
they would
Russia
kill
don't fuck
all-
with Japan.
They'll go sink the whale Navy just for fun, just to say they fucking did it.
Oh my gosh, I never thought. I guess that makes it a fucking genius
It's genius.
strategy.
Like they'll
They're
never
like-
kill our whales.
Yeah, they're like let's send whales after them. They can't kill them. So all you have to do is just, okay, well, this whale's just gonna harass us.
So does this mean, Adam, do you truly think, okay, and take a second to think about it.
Okay.
It's a big question here. Do you think that humans can do anything that they put their mind to? If enough humans and enough money gets together, can we do anything?
I would say
Within the realm of physics, I guess.
right. I would say with the right understanding of, science and everything behind it, I think I'd have to say yeah.
Dude, we keep proving over and over and over that we
Yeah.
are like the ultimate. As much as we don't understand very much about our world and our planet, we are like the ultimate masters of it.
Yeah.
We rule everything about the planet, dude.
Well,
Except the weather, I guess, which we're working on.
yeah. Well, there's even I've seen multiple videos of these giant rain machines that
Yeah.
do exist. I'm sure
Oh,
you've
dude,
seen
China
them too.
has cannons. China has has rain cannons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they shoot. I believe it's silver up into the like low atmosphere, and the water condenses around the silver, and when it condenses, it turns into clouds and it rains.
I think that's what I saw, because the thing I saw looked like this like giant industrialized like skyscraper looking thing, and then like all the fog came from under it and then just floated up into the air, and then it just
So I
started
think
raining
that fog has some kind of metal. I think it's silver, but it has some kind of metal or something
to
in
help
there,
everything condense,
and it condenses the
faster.
water around it. Yeah. From
See,
the
so
atmosphere.
we're fucking
It makes it
getting
rain.
there.
They can also do things like blow stuff up under the water.
Yep.
And make like tsunamis and stuff happen.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest thing to do. I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, I'd say it's easier to throw a bomb underwater to create a tidal wave than it is to make it rain.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on.
I mean, you have a big enough bomb.
I actually truly have no idea on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's, when it comes to like controlling the weather, I feel like it's one of those things that
We can manipulate the weather. we
manipulate
can't
the
necessarily
weather, yeah,
control
yeah.
it, but we can definitely manipulate things.
yes, 100%. But like, I think in terms of manipulating the weather, I think it's one of those things where we know how to do it. It's just one of those, you need big machines and a lot of money, right?
Right.
So it's like the rain machine they had, it was this giant fucking thing on this giant plot of empty land. And yeah, they were able to spit out clouds to make it rain, but only in the area. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, we know we
right.
can do it. We know the theory and like how to put it into practice, but we just don't.
Exactly. There may not be a reason to do it, but we
Yeah.
know enough to do it if we wanted to.
Yes, exactly.
Like, I'm sure they could put that material in a missile and launch it anywhere on the globe that they want and make it rain anywhere on the
True.
planet.
Yeah.
It's just, is it worth it to make it rain in the middle of the desert of Africa?
Yeah.
We can do it, but is it worth it?
Especially in these times where we're so, we like to talk about how green we all are when none of us are really that green.
Another
But-
really cool thing is, as much as there's water shortages in places, we have more water on the planet than land, right?
Yeah.
Except the problem is most of that water is salt water.
Yes.
Okay? You can't drink salt water. Well, we can desalinize water. We can
Yes.
actually, it's expensive right now, but we can make a facility where it turns the salt water into clean drinkable water. They do it
yeah.
in the desert in the Middle East.
We even have ways to skip all those steps now to get clean water out of this dirty, either dirty water or salt water. There was this company that developed these straws that they started like giving out to
I know
different
what you're
villages
talking
and stuff in
about.
Africa. And
The
it was,
survival straws?
Yeah, and it's literally made so you can stick the straw in
There's
like
a
a
filtration
puddle
system in it.
and you get clean water out of it.
Hikers and stuff use those too, even. I've heard those things are actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw a YouTube video where somebody was like reviewing one, and they took a cup of water and they just put like dirt and salt and just a bunch of shit in it, and they go,
drink.
"All right, I'm gonna use this straw," and they said I got clean fresh water from it.
Yeah.
Like
it's pretty genius.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you can even skip all those steps now. It's
So we can do a lot, dude. If we want to do it bad enough, we figured out how to fly. We figured out how to burn fuel and make cars move.
I think we'll figure out time travel at some point. I do
Well,
think
that's a hefty one. That was a leap.
Yeah, I think it's possible though. I think because we know bending of space time is possible, I don't think it's that far fetched to say at some point time travel will be possible to an extent.
I think we'll figure out. And I know this is going to sound like splitting hairs, but I think it makes a difference. I've said that before I've made statements. I think we're going to figure out time manipulation.
So how to make like time move by faster or slower, or time
How
stop?
to experience time differently. Because I don't think that you can change the arrow of time at all. You can't speed it up or slow it down. You can't affect that. Like true base time, whatever that's called. Is what we've talked about that on the podcast before.
Yeah.
That
So you
you
mean
can't
just what
change.
time is relative to you?
Your relative time, that you can manipulate. We may not really know how yet, but it is possible in science and in theory to manipulate your experience of time.
So do you mean on just a level of like how you're perceiving time, or how
time
your
affects you.
being is currently reacting in time?
Well, it could be perception of time. But here's an example of how technology would help to manipulate time. Okay. Cryogenics. I might have said that wrong.
cryogenics?
That's where the concept you always see in the movies of freezing yourself, putting yourself to sleep,
Oh,
and then
okay,
waking back
yeah.
up somewhere many, many years later and being the same age.
Right.
That's manipulation of time on yourself, of
Okay.
your concept of time.
Yes.
And the way that you achieve that manipulation is through means of technology, which would be the chamber or whatever that we create that can freeze people.
Right.
So obviously we can't do that yet that we know of. But conceptually it's possible. Like on
Yes.
paper it's possible. So that's one that we'll probably achieve in the beginning stages of it, because we've already thought of
Right.
that. But I think there's other technologies that we haven't even thought of. It could be something like a device you wear around your eyes or something that makes you experience time differently.
Right.
Something like that. You know what I mean? You can never actually truly change the arrow of time, but you
Right.
can change your experience of it.
Okay, that makes sense. So I can definitely see the like it affecting your being type of thing. The whole affecting your perception of it, though. I have no doubt that we'd have technology to be able to do it. I guess it's just hard for me to fathom, because like it's always just like what happens now, right? If you could be at work one day and work's moving by super slow to you, but to somebody else it's going by super
That's
fast.
your perception. But actually, the minutes are the same amount of minutes that moved at the same speed
Right. So
for both of you.
So in order to like change that particular, just your perception of time, it's almost like, I don't know, I guess you would have to be able to pinpoint what's happening in your brain to make you think time's going by slower than it actually is. Or time's
Yeah.
going by faster than it actually is. It's crazy to think about. But yeah, I believe we'd have that fucking technology for sure.
Now, as far as traveling through time, so we've agreed that you have your own time and you have an arrow of time,
Yes.
right? So now we want to move along the arrow of time. So, I mean, in sense, we're already time traveling. We and you are time traveling right now.
Right.
We're just time traveling into the future, slowly.
Yes.
Every second at a time, we're going into the future and it's becoming the present.
Right.
But we're not constantly in the present, even though we are, because time doesn't stand still.
Right. I
You
see
know what
you're
I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we are traveling the arrow of time, but we always perceive it to be the present.
True. Yes.
Okay, you following?
Yes.
So now that's the easy part. You can go forward in time, no problem.
Uh-huh.
And you could freeze yourself, keep yourself the same age, wake up 10 years later, you've gone forward in time. So going forward in time really isn't an issue. Okay, we want to go back in time.
Yes.
Right? So that's the hard part. There's two things going on when you're going back in time. So there's back in time up to the point where you were born, and then there's back in time past when you were born.
Yes.
Now, to my understanding and my knowledge, which I've done a wee bit of research on this because I'm actually really fascinated in time travel.
Okay.
You conceptually on paper would be able to travel back in a machine. If you could build a spaceship and crawl into it, you could travel back to when you were born. Okay. And within that time, from the present to the past of when you were born, you would be able to get out of the ship and walk around.
Okay.
Now, while this is happening, you also are still existing in the present.
Yes. You're
Okay.
present.
Your present is still moving forward. So
Yes.
you're not existing in anymore. You've left that present, but that present is still moving in time. The people around you, everyone you knew, what you left is still going forward.
Yes.
Okay. So now, if you travel all the way back to the minute after you were born, if you go 2 minutes before that to past when you were born, now you've entered a period where you don't exist. So you, in theory, could go visit it in your spaceship, but you can't get out of the spaceship because you don't
Really?
exist. So
Why
in
would that
essence,
why would that affect you?
you
though?
cannot interact with anything in the time period before you were born because you didn't exist to interact with that thing. Whereas you could, in theory, interact with things in the time after you were born because you existed to be there to interact with it. Does that make sense?
Like I understand what you're saying. It just doesn't make sense to me as to why you wouldn't be able to interact with anything if what's present to you is a constant.
Think of it as watching a movie. So you could be there, but you would only have the ability to watch it as a movie. And you could zip around and see things, but you can't get out because if you get out, you're interacting with that space-time. And you didn't exist to get out of the spaceship in that space-time. You weren't there. So some people call it like the butterfly effect.
Right.
I guess there's nature, the laws of nature and physics and space-time don't allow you to get out because getting out interacts with that space-time. Even if it just means moving the molecules of the air around where you got out, that sets off a chain reaction. Now you have to exist to set off that chain reaction.
I see what you're saying. What you're basically doing is creating an imbalance.
There's an imbalance, and
the
yes.
universe can't have imbalances.
Yes. So, and this is all my theory and my opinion. I'm not saying this is the fact, and I'm not a fucking scientist by any means.
Right.
Okay, but to my knowledge and from what I've chewed on over the years, that's the best I think we'd be able to do is build a machine that we could go back
And like observe.
before we were born or interact with after we were born. Now, the other issue, and I don't fully understand this, but this would be like more of the scientific reason why you can't interact with stuff before you were born, is if you try to exist before you were born, you end up in this weird paradox. And there's a name for the paradox, and there's a Vsauce about this. If anyone is interested, look up the YouTube channel Vsauce and look up time travel paradox, and he'll explain it to you really well. But basically, you end up in a loop of, like I said, my understanding of it is not enough to explain it to you, but you end up in a paradox and a loop of never being able to get back to the present because you would constantly be being reborn. It's weird.
Okay.
Michael from Vsauce can explain that. So that's another reason why you can't do that. So yeah, I think maybe we might be able to build a spaceship one day to go back and observe it.
I've always wondered. So like I said, I understand that theory, but like the way that I would look at it with time travel is that everything that has happened in time is this is gonna sound very redundant, but is a result of things that have already happened.
Right,
So,
a cause and effect.
Right. So if you were to go back during a time before you were born
Okay.
and do whatever, the butterfly effect would not apply because let's say you go back to like 1966, May 3rd, 1966, and you do some shit. Well, the butterfly effect I feel would not apply because your 2019 self was there May 3rd, 1966 and was always going to be there May 3rd, 1966.
Being there observing. You were never there physically existing. You never existed May 3rd, 1966 because your dad wasn't old enough to have you then. You didn't exist as Adam Hansen to do anything in the world.
Right, but it's fucking time travel. But 2019 Adam.
No, I understand what you're saying, but you're
exist.
encapsulated in. Think of the atmosphere in that ship. Mm-hmm. You brought the present time with you. You're in a little atmosphere. You're totally away from existing in it. You can't exist in it. Michael from Vsauce can show you why with pictures and stuff. It's really, really well done. And it's an actual, and that paradox is an actual scientific thing. That is
right.
not, that's
no,
actual
I
scientists
believe
came
that.
up with that.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. Just.
So, yeah, no, and I fully grasp
right
where you're coming from and the thought process that you're using. I fully grasp it, and to an extent, I agree. I'm with you because you are there. You're there.
Right.
I'm here right now. I'm fucking looking around. I'm here, which means I exist here, right? No.
Fucking time travel.
But now, let's say, like, I don't think it's too much harm to say my birth. Let's just assume I'm gonna make up a birthday because I'm afraid to tell you guys my real birthday. I don't know what you're gonna fucking do with it. So let's assume I was born January 1st. Okay. So if I go back to January 3rd of the year I was born, now I can manipulate stuff. I can do things. The rules totally change, and you can always get back to the present from that point. You're good because you're always ahead of your original self.
So that's where like the theory I was just talking about would apply.
Yes,
to
totally,
where if you went back during a time where you're already alive and fucking up with shit, even if it doesn't have to do with you, that's still a constant because you were always there at that point. So
in essence, it's going to be super weird, and these are again just theories because no one really knows, right? So if you're born on the 10th of January, of a year, and you go back to January 12th of that year. Okay, so you're little baby you, 2 years old, in reality, right?
Right.
In present time, you're that.
Yes.
Now, if you were to go and yourself now, your present self goes and visits China on the 12th, okay? That means in reality, in the existence of what happened and your memories, two little baby-year-old you, two-day-old you would bloop and be in China. And that would be your past. That would be your reality, is that when you were 2 years old, you were in China.
Okay, hold on. You lost me there. So it's 29. So I'm born January 10th, 91.
Okay.
And it's 2019, and I have the ability to time travel.
Okay.
So I was born in California.
Okay.
So I time travel back to January 12th, 91, 2 days after I was born.
2 days after you were born.
And I go to China.
You go to China.
2019 me goes to China.
You go back and you visit China as yourself now.
So baby Adam.
While you're yourself, and you can't exist in two places at the same time. That goes against the rules of time and space. Even if we're traveling through the arrow, there's no two yous at the same time and place ever. So, little baby you, while you're there, baby you is bloop. It's got your you in that time now.
That's
You can't
so weird
encompass,
that-
you can't be in two places at the same time.
So baby you just disappears, and then
You're the new you.
so then what happens in that theory when you travel back
Then
to
you're back
2019?
You're back to wherever you left off, being baby you again.
What the
And your whole past of now the 2019 you, that entire, once you go back and now you're back home. So you went to China, you made little baby you exist in China. You made your existence be in China. Okay. So you weren't a little baby for that time. You were 2019 you, but you're still your existence.
Right.
Okay. So little baby you stopped. You're existing for you now. You're in China. You go back. Once you go back, you've changed because that same present you kept going, that time period around you. So that time period has now changed and gone forward however long you were gone for. And B, all of your memories and your past would now be whatever the China version of you did throughout its life because you butterfly affected it. You changed the course of your life.
That's fucking crazy.
You with
I'm
that's
like,
now that is
I'm
the
with
best
you,
way
I'm
that
just-
my theory goes.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I've just never heard that particular theory, so it's
That's
very
what I-
new to me. So I don't even have like an argument or a different theory with it. It's just because I was just always under the impression that you would be existing at once. There'd be
In
a
two
baby
places
you
at the same time.
two places in the same
That
time.
goes against the laws of nature. Nothing does that. That's omnipresence, which is on another dimension.
Right.
You can't do that within this dimension. You cannot be omnipresent.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about
Now,
dimensions.
and that's
so,
the
I
only
mean,
reason that I'm talking in such a manner of like matter-factly
Right.
is I have a certain level of confidence in this theory because I've thought about it a lot. Okay, and I know there's people out there who are going to chew it apart, and I don't want to offend anyone with what I'm saying, and I'm not saying I am right for fact, okay? I'm probably fucking wrong. But as far as I've thought about it, nothing that I've thought of breaks any of the rules of space-time or
Right.
physics or nature. It all works. As far as what
Interesting.
my knowledge extends to.
No,
If someone sees a huge hole in it, let's talk about it. That would be an interesting
No,
conversation
but,
in the comments.
by all means, like I said, with all the, because time travel, I've had my little interest in it, but it's never been something I've like gone to a rabbit hole with. So there's not a lot I can really speak on with it. But like I said,
it's crazy.
with my understanding of dimensions, which is something I've gone into rabbit
You
holes
love
about.
dimensions, yes.
Like I mean, you're right. Explain it on that sense. Yeah, the third dimension you can, the fourth dimension you can.
Could, but now you're talking about changing
Yeah,
dimensions.
but third
And if
dimension
you're going to
cannot.
travel through dimensions, now you're no longer, that's not a matter of time travel.
That's interdimensional travel.
That
now.
is interdimensional
Yes.
travel now, which is, I have theories on that as well. But that is a completely separate science and fact of travel than time
Right.
travel. Time travel exists in the third dimension.
We're gonna have to have a podcast one day with you and Vince discussing time travel because Vince loves time travel.
Oh, I love
Ooh,
discussing
Kyle
it.
too. We're gonna do it. If both of you are listening right now,
Dude, I would love you guys to talk with me about time travel because I feel I'm pretty versed in it. My dad got me into it, actually. My dad
yeah,
is
you've told me a couple
super
things about
interested.
your dad's theories.
He wrote a book, not a published book, but he wrote a book that's in the garage, and it's hundreds of pages, and I've read it, and it goes, dude, his theories on time travel, they're fucking solid. I've heard a lot of them
Yeah,
throughout the years of growing up, and he relates it with ghosts, what we think of as ghosts, being time travelers, and different states of being, like different the states of matter, how you can be a solid, you can be a gas, and you can be a liquid. So he talks about the entropy of moving through those states of matter. Entropy is the course of time. Entropy is time moving forward.
Okay.
How on a beach you can always build a castle, but you never, and a castle can get torn down over time, but you never see nature spontaneously create a sandcastle.
gotcha.
You know what I mean? Nature always goes into
back to
chaos.
Yeah.
It destroys whatever it is. There's an arrow of time, and that's called entropy.
Yes.
So my dad has all kinds of theories on that and the state of matter, and that ghosts are really just time travelers that have changed their state of matter through time travel.
So you've told me about the ghost one before that you just described, but what were some of the other like things in there that he's talked about that covered up a lot of plot holes, for lack of a better term?
Oh, so most of his stuff has to do with the state of being, with matter.
Right.
And I'm not versed enough on it. I don't even want to speak for him on that because they aren't theories that I've adapted and kept with me through my life. So I don't necessarily believe that it works that way.
Right.
But it's very interesting. I don't know if he would ever come on the podcast and talk about it, but whew, man, he's been around the block. He's an older guy, and he has a lot of really cool knowledge about that stuff.
The ghost one is interesting just because I've heard a lot of, there's obviously always a lot of ghost theories and stuff out there, like what ghosts are and things like that. And and your dad's theory is basically that they're like time travelers, right? But you're just seeing kind of like the shadow of them as they're traveling.
Is that the ghost that we see, what we experience, is the shadow in sense.
Right.
What you would relate to as a shadow of a time traveler.
Right.
Not necessarily actual light being casted on an object.
Like
so
an
like
echo.
A shadow is kind of a metaphorical word in this sense. I don't mean a literal shadow being casted.
Right.
But for lack of an actual term, because the science doesn't exist yet, the best term that he's thought of is shadow. So yeah, it's whatever you leave off while you're traveling time.
Not to get off the topic of time traveling per se, but like when we were bringing up the ghost thing, it just brought up like a point that I wanted to make, and that is I seriously think there should be more people out there doing ghost hunts and doing more experiments into like that kind of realm. And I'm not even talking about like a ritualistic standpoint per se of like trying to summon demons or anything like that. But like when I always watch these ghost shows, and unfortunately they don't, there's a lot of flack they get because a lot of them are pretty obnoxious. Ghost Adventures being, one of them that can be quite obnoxious sometimes. Yes.
I personally love that about them, but
I love it also. I do love it. But like, that's always my argument though, is you watch shows like that, and there have been previous ones before them, like Ghost Hunters, and as well as other ones that have popped up. And yeah, there are things that they'll find or whatnot, and sometimes they'll hear things where anybody listening back can be like, well, that's probably this, or that's probably this. But sometimes there are some things that these ghost hunters catch, that they record, that they find, whatever it is, that you're like, well, that's interesting. Like, I don't know how that could have happened. And they'll show it from the different camera angles and all this other shit. And yeah, I mean, at the very end of the day, they could have gone in there and, post editing and put something in there if they wanted to. Sure. But are all of them doing that? Probably not.
Right. I think there's definitely something going on.
That's what I mean. It's like, I'm not saying it's ghost, but when you have those little anomalies like that, I think that having one or two at all out of 100, I think is enough to be like, okay, something's obviously happening here. Let's figure this out more.
For sure.
And it just kills me that in a human society where we pump so much money and time into trying to learn about space and black holes and how black holes bend space-time, that we have these anomalies happening here on Earth in our homes, and everybody's just like, whatever, you probably just heard something, something happened outside, or you just saw something out of the corner of your eye. It's like,
right.
No, I feel like there's enough validity there to where it's like we should
Something
look into it more, right?
Well, it's interesting with all that being said. So with my dad's theory of ghosts what we think of ghosts now as being time travelers. So they're actual people, and we've achieved technology in the future. Okay, so you're just seeing people from the future doing their thing.
Right.
So those little voices that they pick up and the little things and stuff and the scooting of chair, whatever, that would be, in my dad's theory, that would all be the time travelers. So the thing with my dad is that he's a very spiritual man. He's a very religious man. So he definitely believes in a spirit world. And he believes that everyone has a spirit and a soul, and when you die, it goes to heaven or hell. Okay? So there is very much a distinction in his theory that these ghosts that we're seeing, we commonly refer to them and think of them as spirits of dead people.
Right.
Typically spirits that haven't rested for whatever reason. Well, in my dad's theory, he does not think that. He thinks that these ghosts we're seeing are not spirits, and that these are actual people from the future who are time traveling, actual beings. But aside from that, he believes there is a spirit world.
Right.
So in his theory, it's a misconception to think that the ghosts are spirits.
So with him believing that, and him believing that both worlds exist, how would one witnessing these things of the naked eye, like how would he define something that's a spiritual experience or versus something that could be dismissed as time travel?
So the spiritual experience would be like if an angel or a demon were to come into your life. So it's pretty obvious there are demons. Okay. There are exorcisms, and there are actual footage of exorcisms happening. They're not quite as Hollywood as some of the movies have made them look.
No, not
but they
at all.
are a very terrifying, very real thing that happens. We know things can get haunted. We know you can call upon spirits and bring them into your life. Okay. Same thing with angels. You can call upon them. They can help you. Angels are spiritual beings, but they're separate from human spirits. They're server spirits. They're helpers. So I've told the story on the podcast of my mom when she encountered what she thinks is an angel at the emergency room. The guy who came and sat next to her, no one else saw him. Okay.
Right.
So that would be an example of experiencing the spiritual world here in our world.
So based from what you've told me, the argument would be that like a spiritual encounter would be something much more tangible.
Much more tangible.
Than
If a spirit comes to you, they're going to come to you in the form, in my opinion, I'm not saying this is fact,
Right.
Because I'm saying it kind of matter-of-factly. I don't mean to be. But they're going to come to you in a human form or in an animal form or in an object form.
Okay.
Okay. Or something that can affect things in this space-time continuum.
Okay.
Whereas the ghosts, the reason that maybe you can see them, but you can't, even if you see a ghost, you can't touch it, you can't hold hands with it, you can't, it's because it's just a picture, it's a shadow
Right.
of an actual being that is existing and moving through time.
That's funny. It's funny that that's his theory, because that's pretty much exactly opposite of, what, most theorists out there would say. They would say that the tangible stuff would be the time travelers, right? And that the non-tangible stuff would be the spiritual stuff. So it's interesting to hear him think that it's actually the other way around.
Well, and it goes back to my theory of you can't affect things that happened before you were born. So I would assume if we come up with this time travel technology, it's more than 200 years from now. So that would mean everyone around now, this time that me and you are living in right now, any time traveler coming here wouldn't have been alive yet. So they would only be able to exist in a non-influential way, in a visible way.
Right.
And I guess it's kind of the theory of if you can see me, I can see you, like in a mirror kind of thing. Well, they can see you, and sometimes you get a glimpse of them. Sometimes you get a shadow of them.
It's crazy. It's interesting, though.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, me and my dad have put a lot of fucking thought into this.
I
dude.
believe
we
it,
have
dude.
talked about this for years. We're super fascinated in time travel, dude.
I believe it,
Because it's
man.
like the ultimate. It's the ultimate power. It's the ultimate like harnessing, having control over nature is to move through the arrow of time, right? That is existing.
Yeah, I mean, I won't argue with you there. I don't know. For some reason, time travel has just never fascinated me quite to that level. Maybe it's because of my fascination with like the dimensions and stuff like that, because I truly believe that we kind of just all, float up through the dimensions. Dying just happens to be how we leave this one, right?
Right.
So I always just kind of assume that we'll get to a point anyway where we can time travel, both on our timeline and off our timeline as we move on through. But so I've just never really been like, oh, one day we'll time travel. Plus, I've never thought of like an actual need for it either.
Well, and because I believe that does hold true. And I believe that actually holds true even with what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah.
Where if you do exist on a spiritual level, if there's a spirit inside you and it moves through these dimensions as you die.
Right.
And that is how angels and demons are able to come and interact and move down in dimensions and interact with us. Because they don't have to abide by time. They're above that. They are omnipresent because they're in another dimension. A spirit world is what we call it, because we don't have a word for it. So the same way that when Mario sees a 3D object, he sees it in 2D. When we see another dimensional object, we see it in our 3D. So it comes to us as a person or an animal or an object or a cloud of smoke or something tangible that exists in this third dimensional world that we can touch and interact with in some way.
True.
Maybe your hand goes through it or whatever. But, when you have like scratch marks from a spirit.
Right.
In this theory, that wouldn't be a ghost. That would be a spirit because it interacted with you.
Okay.
So I think you're moving through dimensions. I believe in that, and I think it totally holds true to all of this that we've been talking about. That's the difference, is why some things you can interact with and some things can't interact with you.
Have you heard the theories that UFOs that we have seen throughout history are just time travelers coming back to like just as you said, like observe?
Yeah, I've heard those theories.
Would you put stock in that, or would you just be like, oh, those are just aliens, or they're nothing?
Well, I don't believe in aliens.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
I think that we're the only ones, and it's still the very beginning, and it's all there for us. And then the crafts, I think that we have seen UFO crafts throughout history. In the definition of the word UFO craft, unidentified flying object.
Right.
It is an object, it is flying, and we don't know what the fuck it is, so it's unidentified. So it is a UFO by definition.
Yes.
But I think that all of, if not most of those incidents are all technology, whether it be military or civil technology of some kind. Whoever's making the technology, I don't give a fuck, but I think all of it is technology that's being developed by humans that was being tested.
Okay. So you don't think there's anything like supernatural going on there in regards to like time travel or aliens?
No, I think if
whatever
time travelers were able to move through the arrow of time,
they'd be better at hiding it.
They would have to do it in something other than a metal object.
Right.
And to my knowledge, I don't know of any UFO crafts that we've found or claimed to find that were not made of some kind of metal. Right? I don't know of any made out of rock. I don't know of any made out of plastic or water or anything else. I think they're all usually made out of some kind of metal.
Right.
And I don't think that you can travel this arrow of time in a metal craft.
Right. Yeah.
And it takes some other kind of technology that we don't even have words for yet.
I would agree with that.
For it to even be something that we could possibly mimic or draw now means that we're making it up, in my opinion.
Right. I feel
you know what I mean? Because the actual
getcha.
technology would be so far advanced to what we have now. We couldn't even conceptualize it.
Right.
It's 0% exists right now. So that's my beef with it. That's my beef with alien UFO craft.
Right.
Is I think that's too dumb of technology for
No,
what it would actually take.
No, I definitely agree with you. Even as somebody who does believe in like extraterrestrials and aliens, like I've always put very little stock in UFOs.
Now, if you want to say that bacteria on other planets is aliens,
Right.
or that fungus or something is
Right,
aliens,
right.
then with that definition, I believe in aliens.
Right. No,
I do not believe in intelligent cognitive life.
no. What
anywhere
I'm
else in the universe.
what
I'm
I'm
saying.
talking about is
Because I
definitely
know
like
someone's going to say that shit.
No,
There's
I feel
bacteria
ya.
in space. Yes, I agree. There's bacteria, there's fungus on other plants, all that shit. Yes.
But as far as like intelligent,
There's no
life,
intelligent cognitive
species
other than us, in my opinion.
I understand what you're saying. But like I said, even with holding those beliefs of, there being other extraterrestrial intelligent species, like I've always put such little stock in UFO shit. Because here's my problem, okay? When it was like the 1950s through the 1980s, and you would get these pictures and videos and shit like that. Okay, you had an excuse at those times to have shitty fucking footage of these UFO crafts that could be interpreted however people want to interpret it. But when I looked at the fucking internet and it's 2019 where I have a phone and every fucking smartphone on this planet can shoot 4K now. And I see these videos like, oh, a UFO was caught in China. And it's this blurry ass flip phone, 2 megapixel bullshit fucking video footage. And people are like, oh my gosh, what is that? Fuck you. Fuck you. It's 2019.
I certainly myself am not saying to fuck anyone. I'm not upset with anyone who believes anything, but just my personal belief.
Well, all I'm saying is like, I mean, I do believe you in the sense where I think most of it is like military like stuff.
Yeah, that would make sense, right?
But I'm just saying that like any of these new videos that come out now where people are trying to claim, these UFOs as being something extraterrestrial or just UFOs at all, it's like, but they're still filming it on fucking these blurry, shaky cameras in 2019. It's like, come on, who are you trying to fucking fool here?
I'm sure there are examples throughout history of claims being made that the UFO, the craft that someone saw, took off straight up and down off the ground without a runway. So how could it possibly be a human craft? No human craft can do that.
Right.
At that time. Well, now look, however many years later, 20 years later, we have all kinds. We have Harrier craft that take off straight up and down off of ships in the middle of the ocean and land straight up and down.
Right.
So, yeah, you probably saw one of those being tested that the test got fucked up.
Well, and I think there was a documentary I watched at one point too where they were talking about UFOs, and just as you said, there were military stuff that was classified at one point that is no longer classified.
And now it makes sense.
And yeah, like a lot of the saucers that people saw, right? We found out later that we were doing research, classified research with weather balloons, and what happens to weather balloons when they hit the atmosphere? They spread out and they become a disc, and then they pop and fall back down. So it's like, we found out that like half of these, UFO sightings that people were seeing were just these fucking weather balloons, these enormous weather balloons in the air, in the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and at the time it didn't make any sense, but now it makes perfect sense.
Right.
No, I'm a believer in many, many things, but aliens is
not that one,
for me.
huh?
I don't believe in aliens.
I feel you, dude. I get that. I mean, I don't expect anything
Much love
less
for people
from.
who do, though. And I love to listen to it and hear about it because they're cool stories.
I'm just one of those people where don't get me wrong. I totally get it on like a religious, point of view of like why somebody would think that. But I always
even scientifically.
Even scientifically?
There's no fucking proof at all. Zero.
Well, you're right. There's none yet. But we also have very little ways to get that proof,
The only argument that I kind of am like, okay, I guess, whatever, because there's no way to argue against it, is the math argument, the statistics. Is, but there's so many chances out there, and we can only see a fraction of a fraction of a fraction.
Right.
So statistically, it has to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. Statistically, it doesn't have to. Statistically, it should.
True.
Statistically, it would be very probable, and it should, and there's a very high percentage chance that it is.
Right.
But nothing in math says that any statistic needs to be finite, needs to be 100%.
Right.
Especially with as many variables as space and time involved.
Right.
So that's my only argument against that argument. I'm not hating on anyone, but it always comes down to that. Always comes down to, well, statistics say it has to be possible.
Right.
No.
And
it's probable.
Right. And I totally get you with that. And because I do agree to an extent with you in regards to, like, if we were to find life, I don't think the first life that we discover is going to be, sentient beings like ourselves. We might find an entire, green planet with plants and an ecosystem and animals and stuff like that.
I truly think that we will find that.
Right. And maybe even find, early creatures in the early stages that, apes were in the early stages, here on Earth. But, like, as far as finding another, like, sentient planet and stuff, I mean, a perfect example is, like, one of the exoplanets that we have found to be most Earth-like is this planet they've called it Kepler 22b, because it was caught by the Kepler 20 telescope. Yeah. And we were able to get, pictures of this planet and be able to find out how the atmosphere and everything was on it. And it's almost like they call it a second Earth, because it has land, there's water, there's oceans, there's an atmosphere, there's clouds. All of that exists.
Right.
But again, it could be a fucking green planet and everything that lives there is just their own bugs, bugs could be the leading, things on that planet. They just happen to live in a green planet. But the chances of us, going there one day and finding fucking skyscrapers and shit, probably not.
Now, I feel that I do need to clear something up here real quick. That I agree with everything you just said.
Right.
I think that we will find all those things. I think that there's planets with bugs on it. I think there's planets with plants, what we would equate to something like a plant on it. I think that there might be things that are alive that are moving around on another planet. I don't have any problem with that. And I think that it's probably a real thing. But I don't think we have enough time today, and I don't really want to get into evolution on this podcast. But I don't think that things evolve to become humanistic.
Right.
In that, I don't think that we evolved from something that wasn't cognitive and sentient into something that was. I think that
because
humans, mostly because of my faith.
Right.
There's the small scientific element of the missing link, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to get into that, Adam. We're not getting into evolution.
Okay,
but the only point I'm making here, and the only reason I brought it up, is to say my version of how evolution would work is much different than most people's. So for me, I don't think that even if there was animals or things alive moving around on another planet, I don't think they would ever get to a point where they became sentient or human-like. I think that we're the only beings who are going to be that. So for that reason, I say I don't believe in aliens.
Right.
But I do believe in extraterrestrial life forms. Okay? And someone's going to fuck me up out there for saying that. But that's the best way I can explain my personal beliefs to everyone.
Hey, well, as you just said, they're personal beliefs. They obviously come from somewhere. And just as you said and clarified, you and I very much disagree on that matter.
Disagree. But huge amounts of respect for each other. And I love talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel any amount of distress when we talk about it.
Yeah. And, on a final note on that point, that's what's truly missing right now is, like, you and I do have vastly different beliefs in a lot of things.
Yeah, we really do, actually. And we have great conversations, too.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why we have those good conversations is because even if I disagree with you, I will always let you finish your thought and finish explaining to me so I can get an understanding of where you're coming from. And I think what a lot of people need to do is once you get that understanding of where somebody's coming from, I don't feel a need to try to convince you of why I think you're wrong, because you're able to justify how you got to the point of where you are, and I think...
Well, a lot of times you end up teaching me stuff about things too.
Well,
a lot of times I'll even go like, oh, I never thought of that.
Well, and likewise, 100%, and I love listening to why you think, for those who don't know, I'm somebody who's like, I'm not religious, but I'm very into like the mythos of all the religions.
That's what I would call it.
Yeah,
I'm religious,
spiritual,
but you're a spiritual person.
But when it comes to stories,
those are some of our best conversations.
They really are.
The religious ones.
And that's just it. When it comes to stories of the Bible, or even, not the Bible, it could be Greek mythology or Norse mythology, like all of that stuff of how different people explain how things happen in the world before science was around, or in this case while science is around. It's just fascinating to me.
Just higher powers.
Deities,
higher
exactly.
Powers. Fascinating.
It's
so no disrespect to anyone. We're young, dumb, full of opinions, guys.
Young, dumb, and full of opinions.
Today we just picked one we were a little more passionate about.
And maybe one day we'll get into evolution and we can go down that path, but that will not be today.
Not today.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media platforms. We also have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/hardlymillennial. And any final thoughts, Matthew?
Don't beat us up too bad in the comments. Be nice.
Or do so. Every comment helps. So if you want a thumbs down us, go for it. You're just helping us. All right.
Love you guys.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.